from the NR Hour Sports Show. This is episode 782. I'm joined by a really special guest, Jeff Nelson, a former MLB relief pitcher, four-time World Series champ from the New York Yankees, and he also played with the Mariners. He had 3 stints with the Mariners, played with the Rangers and then White Sox. But for you, it's truly an honor to have you on the show today. And first of all, how are you and your family doing so far during the substitution?
We're doing great. We all got vaccinated, so that's one good thing. And hopefully this masks thing will end. We're in Florida, so I think the mandate stopped. So it's a good thing to see. Watching baseball, you're seeing some of the teams now that's reached 85% quota. So some of the the first base, third base coaches, they don't have to wear masks. The guys in the dugout don't have to wear masks. So slowly they're getting back to normal baseball again.
Yeah, I'm in Florida too right now. Actually, yeah. I'm in Orlando. Where are you at right now?
West Palm Beach.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. So first, I want to start off with your childhood. And for you, when you were growing up, when did you start realizing that you wanted to play baseball? But did you get to play any other sports before deciding on baseball?
I did. I played basketball and played a little bit of football, mainly in high school, basketball and baseball. But I grew up in Baltimore, so I was always a big Oriole fan. And we didn't have computer games back then. Atari, that was about it. I don't know if anybody's even heard of Atari anymore. But we did everything outside. Whatever we could do to get out, you played tennis ball or wiffle ball. And, I would pretend I was the whole Orioles lineup in backyard with wiffle ball. So I absolutely loved it. We had all sports. So, we didn't have the year round and, see baseball, basketball, even see sometimes football. They're playing almost 12 months a year, and we didn't have that ability. And so we were playing seasonal time. And, we did what we could in the summer with baseball and played softball, whatever. So, we just enjoyed all sports. And I probably not till high school did you ever think that maybe I could possibly go a little bit further with this.
So did you have like a role model growing up that you looked up to in any sport?
Yeah, one of my favorite players, I had 2 of them, was Jim Palmer with the Orioles. So I used to watch him. And when I first was in the minor leagues, I used to work out at Memorial Stadium down underneath the right field bleachers in Baltimore. And they were still back then playing. He was towards his end of his career or maybe even coming back. So, I watched him a lot. And then Dave Winfield. I'm 6'6", he's 6'6", and he's one of those, 4 sports stars back in high school and college. So those 2 guys were the ones that I watched the most.
So for you, as a player, when you were playing baseball, when you work on your craft, and for you in high school and college, did you get to start at some point, like start games, or you always wanted to be a reliever?
No, when I was in the minor, I started in high school. Obviously, they don't even think there was any such thing as relievers back then. You just pitched the whole game. Didn't matter how many pitches it took. But when I was in the minor leagues, I started. I started my whole career. I was one of those guys that I could always bounce back. I had a rubber arm. My velocity was the one thing that it started in the mid to low 90s. And then all of a sudden, after the 3rd or 4th inning, it started decreasing a little bit. And around 1990, after the second half, I probably reached my peak as a starter. And they said, hey, we would love to make you a reliever. We want to make you a closer. So I closed the second half in 1990. And then 91, I became a reliever for the first time, went to Puerto Rico, led the winter ball and saves there. And then the next year I made the big leagues.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So speaking of making the big leagues, obviously you made your debut with the Seattle Mariners. What was that like when you got the call from them, and where were you that day when you had to pack your bags and go to the major league team?
Well, I was in Calgary, Canada. It was the AAA team for the Mariners. And in 1992, I wound up getting sent down in spring training right at the end. And I actually only pitched 1 game in Calgary. And one of the manager, I was a closer then, so I got to save the first night. And the second night, it was a save situation, and I didn't go in. So I was wondering what was going on. And the big league club was in Milwaukee, and they just finished playing their very first game. And I don't know if somebody got hurt or they just said, you know what, we're going to send somebody down. But they called me in the office in Calgary. I spent almost 8 years in the minor leagues, and it was Keith Bodie was the manager back then, with Ross Grimsley was the pitching coach. They called me in, said I was going to Milwaukee, and immediately called my parents, and a long time coming. So it was exciting. And I told myself, okay, once I'm here, I'm not going down.
Wow. Yeah. So before we get to your major league career, what were the main things that you learned in the minors that got you where you're at right now?
No, I guess perseverance. It's easy spending that long in the minors that you'd want to give up and you'd want to say, okay, I want to. But you always love camaraderie. Even though you think everybody would backstab each other, because especially all the pitchers, because you all want to get to the big leagues. And now it's a little bit different. It's money. If you got signed by, if you made more money in the draft, then you're going to get pushed to the big leagues a lot quicker than someone that didn't get a big draft bonus. But it was the camaraderie in the minor leagues was something that I don't think players take for granted, but you're all there. And it's a team type atmosphere, even though you're shooting to get to the big leagues, and you're always pulling for each other, which I guess in some sense is a surprise, because you're always fighting with that next pitcher, or you're always competing with the next pitcher to try to get there quicker than he does. And you probably should hope that, hey, I hope this guy doesn't do well so I can get there ahead of him. But you're always pulling for each other, and that's something that I guess is pretty hard to understand, because once you get to the big leagues, you're pulling for everyone because it's all about winning. But it was fun. I played a long time in A-ball. I spent 4 years in A-ball in the California League. I only spent a half a year in AAA, which was nice, and a couple of years in AA. But you get to see the world. You get to see a lot of players. I played with a lot of guys that really had good big league careers. And some of the leagues I played in, there were some superstars that we played against that were in AA and AAA that you look back now and you say, wow, that guy was in our league back then, and now he's probably a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. So I have I love learning about history, and I have your roster pulled up here with the Mariners, and man, what a roster you play. What was it like coming into your rookie year and seeing players like Edgar Martinez, Tino Martinez, Omar Vizquel, Ken Griffey Jr., and you had Brett Boone, and you go down the list, man. What was that like playing with those type of players?
Well, Edgar, out of all those, were about the only one I never played in the minor leagues with. I played in the minor leagues with Ken Griffey Jr. in San Bernardino. It was his second year. I mean, this guy was just amazing back then. Probably the best player and athlete I've ever played with and against. I played with Brett Boone. I played with all the Boones. It was funny. I even threw to his dad in spring training in 1991. I played with Aaron in New York, and then Brett in the minors, and then also in Seattle. Edgar was probably one of the best hitters that I've ever seen in baseball. I faced him, hit a couple home runs off me, which he probably still reminds me of every now and then. But it was amazing to go up, and we didn't have a good team in 92, and then we lost 98 games. But the pitching coach was Dan Worthen back then. It came to me, says, "You're not going to go down, just relax and learn up here." Randy Johnson and Jay Buhner was probably the hardest guys to get to know, and those are the ones that I wanted to know the most. So if I got in with them, then I knew that I'd be okay. And they wound up being some of my best friends. I lived in Seattle for a number of years, 20 years, and hung out with Jay and Ken Griffey Jr. and Randy Johnson all the time in the winter. I mean, we golfed, we did everything together. So it was an exciting time. It was good to finally get there, but then play with a lot of superstars.
I forgot to mention Randy Johnson. I can never forget him.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the best pitchers in the game. And for you though, obviously you played with a lot of teams throughout your career, and you had 3 stints with the Mariners. But I'm just curious, as a player, was it tough for you moving from team to team, or you knew what? Obviously, you knew about the Mariners, but when you moved to like the Rangers, White Sox, for example, was it a tough adjustment? How tough was it moving from team to team?
Well, I stayed in the American League my whole career. 13 of the years where I was with Seattle and New York. So even though I went back 3 different times, the first time I obviously got called up by Seattle. We went to the playoffs for the first time in '95. You always thought, in my heart, I mean, you had a soft spot for the fans in Seattle. You always wanted to get to the World Series. We came close a couple times in '95 and then '01. I always wanted to go back and try to win a World Series there, especially after winning 4 in New York. You go to Texas, basically, I wanted to go after the '03 season. I did want to go back to the Yankees. That didn't happen, so I still wanted to play for a couple more years. Went to Texas, which I absolutely loved going there and playing. It's a shame most of it I was hurt a little bit, and then I went back to Seattle in '05. had a contract in spring training with the Mets, but I said, there's two teams that I don't think I'll ever play for, and that's the Mets and the Red Sox. I said, I'm a Yankee, and that's it. And so I went back to Seattle, and then ended up with Chicago. I wanted to play till I was 40, and I was able to do that. And injuries towards the end of the year with my arm kind of limited me a little bit. You know, I still wish, I look back, that I had some time on the DL, and I could have reached 1,000 games, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, so now I want to get to your Yankees career. Obviously, four-time world champion, and you got to play with some great players there too. The core four: Jeter, Mariano, Posada, Pettit, and it was there also. And then you play with Jim Leyritz, and you play with also you play with Bernie Williams, David Cohn, Dwight Gooden. What was that like in the locker room? And what was the message that the manager gave you guys to win all those titles?
Well, Joe Torre was probably one of the best managers. I played with him and Lou Piniella, and both of them were great and different in a lot of ways. You know, Joe was more laid back, and he needed to be laid back in New York, and really took the media level away, because the media level back then, especially when Mr. Steinbrenner was alive, it was really tough. I mean, it's a little bit forgiving now. You know, I don't think some of these players would have an easy time back in the day when Mr. Steinbrenner was around, especially with the media. They weren't very forgiving. But he just allowed, you know, Joe Torre allowed us to go out there and do our job. There was enough pressure as it was, especially in New York. I mean, New York, is unlike any other place in sports. You know, it's a saying, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. You know, that's the truth. You know, you see a lot of guys that come to New York, superstars from other teams. We had Cecil Fielder, we had, you know, Roger Clemens. These guys were superstars with the teams, Detroit and Toronto and Boston. They come over to New York, and they're just like everyone else, and the fans will let them know if they're not doing well. And that was the one thing that was a little bit easier. Even though you're not used to being booed at home, the fans don't single anybody out. They're going to boo everyone. And if you're not doing well, you know, they're going to let you know, whether it's Bernie Williams, Mariano Rivera, Jeter, you know, whatever. So if they're booing them, I said, okay, if I'm not doing well, then I probably deserve to be booed. But we had such great teams, and Mr. Steinbrenner always made sure we had a great chance to win. We just had to do it on the field. Derek Jeter was one of the best leaders, probably one of the best and smartest baseball players I've ever played with. And everybody followed him in a way that once he stepped between the lines, it was all business. You can have fun, and it was fun, but it was, hey, we're going to try to beat that other team. And if we don't win, then it should be a surprise, instead of, oh, you know, we just weren't that good. No, we were supposed to be better than everyone.
Yeah, so obviously, what was it like playing with David Cohn? Obviously, one of the best pitchers to play the game. And what was it like being Aaron Boone? What was it like seeing Aaron Boone as a teammate, and now translating into a manager?
Yeah, you know, with Coney, I used to watch. I wanted to make sure I stayed in the big leagues a long time, so I wanted to learn from others. You know, I used to watch guys from other teams, and one of the ones, my teammate was Randy Johnson. I used to watch how he used to go about his business, even though he was left-handed. But I used to watch Roger Clemens as well. He was very intimidating on the mound, and I knew I had to be the same way. And same with David Cohn. I mean, David Cohn was a battler. I used to watch him when he was in Toronto, Kansas. So 8 innings and give up 1 or 2 runs. I mean, he was a real big competitor, and I admired that from him, and I watched and learned a lot from him. With Aaron Boone, it was funny. You know, he came over to New York in the trade in 03, and you know, he struggled a little bit again. You know, you have guys that come over and they expect a lot out of you, and you know, he didn't have a great time in the field, and all of a sudden he hit the home run against Boston and sends us to the World Series. I couldn't imagine being on a Yankee team that the Red Sox beat to go to the World Series. And now you see him as a manager. You know, he's a very calming guy as well, good communicator. You know, he's done a pretty good job there, and it's a different game now. So you really have a lot of personalities, maybe even more so now. I think guys are more sensitive now, so you have to deal with a lot that maybe you didn't have to deal with back then.
Yeah, so this is another 2-part question. Obviously, you play with Joe Torre, a laid-back manager, and you play with Lou Piniella. So would you say Lou Piniella was like a Billy Martin type of guy, like a fiery guy and always yelling and screaming?
Yeah, you know what, with Lou, I always credit him that he was the reason that I had a lot of success in New York. he was a guy that expected a lot out of you. And I think you will obviously learn from Billy Martin. He was a very passionate player when he played the game. He wore his heart on his sleeve all the time. And if you took him the right way and say, okay, he's trying to get the best out of me, and he knows that this isn't a kid game, it's a very tough game, and it's all about winning and competing. And really, you don't have any time to try to let down or let your guard down. And he appreciated if you would go through a wall for him. And I learned a lot. And, he gave me thick skin. He taught me how to compete. He taught me how, you got to have a short memory in this game. If you don't do well, you got to get back up on the mound, and you can't dwell on the past. And you just say, okay, hey, today is a new day, go out and get him. And he was great in that way. And I learned a lot. And I think that's one of the reasons why I such success in New York, that I could always get over the fact that maybe the fans were a little tougher. They were more passionate. Maybe the media was a little tougher than anywhere else. Definitely the owner was a lot tougher than anywhere else. So, I was able to accept that and handle that a little bit better.
And the next part to this question, obviously, the Yankees are always known for their bullpen, and you guys have one of the best bullpens in the game back in the day also. And we still have a great bullpen now. So for you, what was it like being in the bullpen with John Whitland and you also Mariano, and obviously Mariano being the closer eventually? So what was it like being surrounded with them?
Well, you knew, okay, all we had to do was try to cover 4 to 6 outs in the 7th, 8th inning. We had really good starters back then, and that helped. It helped us as a bullpen stay healthy as far as not having to go into the 5th inning or 6th inning all the time and worry about 12 or 15 outs. All we had to worry about is maybe 4 to 6 at a time. When you have Pettit and you have David Wells, Cone, Jimmy Key, El Duque, you had Roger Clemens, you had guys like that would go deep into the game. It was a little bit easier saying, okay, around the 7th inning, you start looking up on the scoreboard. Okay, I have these righties. Mike Stanton has these lefties. You throw in Ramiro Mendoza when he ate some middle innings up in case a starter did get knocked out. And then you either hand it to Wetland, who was one of the better closers, and then obviously the greatest closer in the game was Rivera. So you knew whenever you were in trouble, you could look over your and you had a rescue guy coming in that was most likely never going to get hit in Mariano. It was just fun watching him pitch, and just for one pitch and just dominate hitters the way he did.
So some of my friends have a quick couple questions for you that they send in, and they're part of our team for the show, and they have their own podcast too called the Grunt Talks. I'm sure you know about it, and they have a question. My friend Julian has a question for favorite Yankee moments, and what do you miss most about the game?
Favorite? That's the favorite Yankee moments are tough because there were so many good ones. I mean, unfortunately, I guess, we go to the World Series in '96, and then obviously the '98 team where we won 125 games. But my favorite one was when we played the Mets in the World Series in 2000. It was, I don't think the rest of the world cared, but it was New York City. You had 2 houses, one Met fan, one Yankee fan. The Mets were talking trash back then, saying, oh, the Yankees are old. But I just love the rivalry, and I obviously coming out on top. I can't imagine losing to them, but that was probably one of my favorite memories in baseball. And what was the other one?
Oh, they want to know what do you miss most about the game?
What I miss, I guess a lot of guys miss the travel. I mean, I do broadcasting now, so I get to travel just a little bit. Unfortunately, it hasn't been the last couple of years, but I liked traveling to the different cities and playing in the different ballparks. I think the competition, because even though once I retired, I learned to ski, you golf, you try to compete in that, but it's never the same. I don't think you can ever repeat that competitive nature that you have on the baseball field.
So for you, looking back at your career and the numbers you put up and winning 4 World Series titles with the Yankees, and do you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? And in my opinion, you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you. I'm in the Hall of Fame in Maryland, like the Sports Hall of Fame. And then it used to be because of COVID, they went out of business in New York City. There was an Irish pub called Foley's, and they had the Irish Baseball American Hall of Fame. So maybe I'm in a Hall of Fame in a pub, and that's about as close as I think I'll get.
But I mean, to be honest, I think they need to change up the rules a little bit when it comes to Hall of Fame. My opinion is that it doesn't matter about it shouldn't be a matter about the numbers. I think it should matter how hard they worked and the numbers they put up and accolades. And do you think they should maybe change it up a little bit so everybody gets a fair shot here?
I don't know. Thank you, but I don't know. I'm kind of old school, and even some of the guys that have gotten in, I think they've been a little lenient with some of them. I think it's just a shrine for the absolute superstars that should be getting in. I mean, you look at the NFL and the NBA; it seems like everyone's getting in.
Yeah.
And baseball is just still one of those exclusive memberships, and they're starting to break a little bit as far as realizing maybe the 300 games nobody's going to get to, the 3,000 hits maybe nobody's going to get to. They're starting to relax on some of those numbers. I even like Don Mattingly. I see him most all the time when he's in the Marlins. I think he's probably should be in the Hall of Fame. But it's always closers and starters as far as pitchers. There's no middle guys. I mean, the middle guys, we just started making the All-Star team back in 2001, and now they're doing it. So
Yeah. So I want to ask you this. So before we get to the transition to your broadcasting, here's an important question: where do you keep your World Series rings?
Oh, they're in a closet.
Oh.
No, they're in a safe. So I don't wear them very often. If I go to a special event and maybe people would like to see them, I usually do it then, but not very often.
Okay. Yeah. So now transitioning to your broadcasting career. So what's it like now covering the game from a different aspect, seeing these young players come up, and obviously the veteran players still there, and seeing your former teammates being like managers like Aaron Boone, and then also being broadcasters too, like David Cohn and Paul O'Neill and Tino Martinez. So what's it like just covering the game now and being connected with your teammates and seeing young talent now?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it because you miss that part of the game and you can still stay involved. I think there's a lot of exciting players out there. I like the excitement. I like seeing them pump their fist and doing all different things when they get on base. You look at Ronald Acuna, look at Soto with the Nationals. There's such good young talent now, and they have such fun playing the game. And I like seeing it. A lot of old school guys are like, oh, these guys, okay, they would never do that in our day. But, it's not our day. It's their day. And they're doing a great job. And I love seeing the emotion on the playing field because now the game has changed so much. The offense is not really like it used to be. It's almost a boring sport. I mean, it's home runs or strikeouts, and it's just you sit there and watch, and it drives you nuts. So any kind of enthusiasm with some of these young players, I think it's great. I like describing the game. Because the game's so hard, I'll never get on a player say, "Oh, he doesn't belong here," or this or that. It's more like, okay, if he doesn't do well, I'll explain why he's not doing well.
Yeah.
Or if he does well, I'll explain why he's doing well. And that's what I like to try to explain the game to the fans.
Yeah. So obviously, I want to talk about the Yankees this year so far, and you were at the game, I think, this weekend, right?
Right.
With your daughter, and also, I want to ask you though, what do you like about this team? Obviously, we started off slow, and I think, my opinion, the way I think their season changed when they made that Odor trade. I think he brings a different intensity to the team, but obviously he's injured now. But for you, what did you guys do as a team when you went through struggles like losing streaks, we went through now, but obviously they turned around their season?
Well, I think for one, you have to realize that if we went through a little losing streak, it was more like, hey, we know we're a good team. You have to realize that you're still a good team, that teams go through these type of streaks, and you can't let the outside world get into your head saying, oh, the Yankees are struggling. What are they doing? They don't, they're not going to be able to turn it around. Are they really that good? And the same with this team now. Going into the season, I thought they were probably the best team in the American League. Now, from the start, you may change that just a little bit because there's so many guys hitting under 200. There's so many guys that I think mentally need to turn it around. I mean, you look at Sanchez, you look at Frazier, he's getting an opportunity to play every day. The guy's hitting 140. That would never happen, maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago. A lot of these guys wouldn't even be around, but you're seeing more and more guys, which is not acceptable, around baseball hit under 200 right now. I don't know if it's the pitching. I don't know if these guys are just all or nothing, which they have been. But the Yankees, I think one thing that you like to see is the pitching is starting to turn around. The starters as far as Kluber, Taillon, even Montgomery, you look at Herman, their starting five is pretty solid, and they're going deep into the game, and that's what you want to see. I hate the 5 and dive. I hate, here comes the 100 pitch mark. We got to get these guys out. You're starting to see the pitch count creep up there with Tyone. He got into the 7th inning with 99 pitches. You have Cole, obviously. So that saves your bullpen. Being a bullpen guy, you need to save them early because you're going to need them late in the season as far as August and September. And their starting rotation is probably one of the things that have been a really good positive right now.
Yeah, and so this is now we do this fun little segment. It's called the rapid fire segment on the show. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Out of all the World Series you won, which one? What do you think is the most memorable one?
2000, the Mets.
Okay. Against all right. So take me back to that. What was it like being in the Subway Series and the World Series and beating the Mets in the World Series?
Yeah, we backed into the playoffs that year. We lost the last 6 in a row, and I think we only won like 86 or 87 games. The Red Sox wind up losing, so we won the division. We barely got by Oakland. I think it took us 5 games. And we did get by, I think it was Seattle in 2000, and that took 6 games. And then, we played the Mets. And, we had interleague play back then, because of this. I mean, we had the Subway Series. We were playing the NL East, so we knew a little bit about the Mets. It was fun just hearing them talk a lot of smack. Agbayani, at Turk Wendell, we're going to beat these guys in 5. They're getting old. And, we wind up beating them in 5. We knew what kind of team we were. And once we got to the World Series, we knew how to win. We've been there and done that before. And I think everybody had just that little bit of edge to try to win 3 in a row. Right. And do it against the Mets made it more special.
Are you a gum or seeds guy?
Gum, I did do some seeds, as a superstition thing. You always did it maybe in the 1st or 2nd inning, but I was a gum guy. No tobacco, never chewed, never dipped. So it was all Trident gum back then. Yeah.
So obviously Dave Winfield was tall, and I'm not saying Aaron Judge is Dave Winfield, but does he remind you of Dave Winfield, like the stature type?
Stature, yes. Dave Winfield played through everything. And one thing that sometimes surprises me when big guys get hurt as easy as they do. I understand they not complain, but any little nick, they're telling the trainer. Back when Dave Winfield played, he'd probably play with a broken foot and nobody would ever know. So that's probably the only difference. But as far as stature, they're big dudes.
Thoughts on Aroldis Chapman's season so far?
This guy, and he developed a split. So all of a sudden now the hitters are saying, now we got to worry about a slider. Something's about 98, 100 mile an hour fastball. And all of a sudden he comes up with a split. I mean, he's absolutely nasty. He's one of the dominant lefties. And that's the thing. You don't see that kind of speed from a left-handed pitcher very often. And he's just dominant. When he's throwing strikes, he's unhittable.
So do you think I know Aaron Boone is entering his final year of his contract. Do you think this is a make or break year for him?
I don't know. It's tough to say. I think the Yankees were built, because they signed Cole. You win 1 World Series in 20 years. That's not like Yankee baseball. You would love to see them at least gone to the World Series a few more times. I mean, maybe not have to win it, but at least get there. I think with adding Kluber, Tyone, if these guys can stay healthy, I think they need to get to the World Series because I think they still are the best team in the American League if they can put things together. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, if the Yankees all of a sudden look and say, hey, we need to make a change. But he's done a great job there at the same time.
All right. Do you like the new extra innings rule?
No, can't stand it. I don't like the 7-inning thing, doubleheader. I hate the guy on second base, and I know they did it with COVID. Now, as a broadcaster, you like it because you're not going to sit around for 18 innings. But if I was playing, I would absolutely hate it, especially a visiting player, because it always benefits the home team. Because it's basically, okay, whatever happens in the top half of the inning, you know what you have to do in the bottom half. And I'm sure if they ever did a study, more home teams wind up winning.
Yeah, so for you, if the right opportunity presents for yourself, would you consider being a pitching coach or a manager at some point down the line?
What I want to do is I did a little bit in spring training for the Yankees. I did radio, and I would love if Susan Waldman and John Sterling ever decided to hang them up. That's my dream job. I did do some Yes Network for the Yankees, and maybe I'll continue to do that. But I would love to do anything Yankee baseball. They're the only team I root for. I know I work for the Marlins, and I do some stuff for the Marlins and Bally Sports, and I do root for them because they're, you have to. And I see a lot of good young talent there. But the team that you grew up with, where you actually, came up with one with you retired as. So they're the team that I would want to work with.
Yeah, come join Michael K. We would love to have you with Michael
Exactly. I mean, absolutely. New York's my favorite city. So, I would love to work there.
All right, so before we get to the last two things, I want to ask you about Derek Jeter. What's he like as an owner with the Marlins?
He's done he's doing a great job as far as he's very passionate. He wanted to own be a part of an ownership group in baseball. The Marlins gave him that shot, or gave him an opportunity to be part owner. He's trying to do everything he can to build a good team. He took a lot of heat with trading some of the superstars, but you needed to trade them because they didn't have any pitching, no pitching in their organization, and even in the minor leagues. He's trying to do everything he can to get fans back in the stadium. He's there from 8 in the morning until the game's over if they're home. So he's working his butt off.
So for you, what was it like being back at Yankee Stadium and seeing fans there?
It was nice. I did some road games for the Yankees during spring training. I went over to Dunedin and Clearwater, and to see fans back in spring training, even though it was a limited amount, that was good to see. And then to go to Yankee Stadium, even though it was 10,000, you wish there was more. Wish there was it was louder. Especially against the Houston series. I mean, that would have been even better if you would have sold out for 3 days and then let them have their way with the Astros. But it'll happen. I mean, you'll get to 100% here soon. But it was nice to see, and they're loud. I mean, the 10,800, the 22%, 20%, whatever they have. They passionate fans, and it was nice to see.
Yeah, but everything here in Florida is open now, so
right.
Hopefully soon New York. But the last two things here. So our team is part of this foundation called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. Obviously, he's a former NFL coach. He's now the offensive coordinator at Tennessee State with Eddie George. So I'll send you that page so you can check out the foundation. And
okay,
we're trying to help him prevent human trafficking. It's still bad out there, and we're coming up with ways how to prevent it, and we're really inspired to be part of it, and we're doing some great things with the foundation. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers right now?
Well, I know they've worked their butts off as well through this pandemic, and I just like to thank everyone that, like you said, that the police department, the fire department, the nurses, the doctors, to put their lives in danger, and to try to help everyone else, and to be working 24 hours, some of them, and putting on these masks, these suits, and doing everything they can to try to make our lives easier. I mean, they do an amazing job, and hats off, and a big, huge clap and applause for those guys.
Yeah, well said. And there it is, guys. This wraps up episode 782 for the NR Hour Sports Show with 4-time World Series champ, relief pitcher Jeff Nelson. Thank you for coming on the show today. It's truly an honor. Everyone go follow him on all social media formats. Like I said, he should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know why, but keep up the great work as a broadcaster. I hope you get the opportunity to coach one day or something, or come to the S Network. But keep up the great work, and we would love to have you back as a returning guest at some point so you can meet the full team.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime.